Bon après-midi à tous, and welcome to this hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. We have a couple of members that are, 3 members that are joining us online. We don't have them quite yet, but what I'll do is I'll start with the opening remarks and then get confirmation that they can join us for the hearing of the applications. So with that, welcome, bienvenue. This is panel 1 for the urban area. We are City of Ottawa Quasi-Judicial Tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variances and consents to sever. Our hearings are back to being in person, have been for a little bit now. Participation remotely is can be enabled for anyone who has an interest in participating in the meeting and can't, for whatever reason, attend in person. You are being live streamed on YouTube, and the video is archived and available for future viewing if you wanted to check us out at a later date. Nothing else to do someday. Just watch us again. So, and the agenda is also on the committee's website and archived. So if you ever need to refer back to that. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be chairing the hearing today. And with me are fellow panel members, member Keklikan. And online, we have members Lecuyer, Coakley, and Blatherwick. All right, so everyone's on. In terms of the procedure, okay, so you saw the agenda. The agenda is really only the order in which the applications are confirmed. We do have an opportunity to mix that around depending on the complexity of the application or the controversy. And so we're going to do a little bit of that today. In terms of procedure, what we typically do is either ask for a presentation from the applicant or agent or landowner. Then we get the panel members to ask their questions, and that means asking questions to either the agent or planning staff and to get some clarification. Then we go out to the public portion. So I have a speakers list, and I always start with the speakers list. If you're not on the list, that's okay. You just need to let me know that you want to approach the panel and speak, and we'll just add you. The only thing I'll need from you, though, at that point is your full name and municipal address, and I may need you to spell out your, and I'm not on screen. I tend to do this, so my apologies to those online because you can't see me. Perfect. Okay, so that's fine. You just need to give me that information, and don't worry, I'll remind you if need be. And only because we need it on the record, right? So that's all part of just the documentation. So once we've heard from everybody on an application, then we close that public portion. If there's issues to be clarified with staff, then we take the time to do that. And then we give the applicant or agent a few minutes at the end of that hearing of that application to recap or to provide comments on some of the things that may have been heard. Then we can move to a decision, and so that decision then is provided officially in writing with the reasons for it within 10 days of the hearing. And that's provided to anyone who has requested a copy of the decision. Sometimes we give the decisions orally as well, so you can get both. We can either grant or we can deny an application. Sometimes we reserve. So if there's a lot of oral submissions, that's new evidence to us, we'll close and adjourn that hearing on that application. And then when the whole of the hearing is adjourned, we then reconvene and we make decisions on the applications that we've reserved on. So that's how we kind of proceed. If you're coming to the front to speak, keep in mind you have a 5-minute maximum. Any increase to that is really at my discretion, and so we try to stay concise as much as you can, and not repeat some of the things that you've heard already from your neighbors. I know it's just to keep things moving. That's the only reason I ask that. Okay, so with that, order of business for the panel members. Does anybody have any conflicts of interest to declare on either our agenda or the agenda of any other panel? And I'm seeing no, so that's good. No one has any declaration of conflict of interest. We don't have any minutes to confirm, I don't believe. Nope, no minutes to confirm at this meeting. And we're going to call down, there's no official adjournments at this point on my docket, but I'd like to call down application number 2 for 290 Homewood. I think I'm looking for Agent Adams. Online or in person? Oh, okay. Come on down. Good afternoon. There's a button to speak. So, so the committee became aware that just recently there's been some changes to the I guess this application, in the sense that I guess there's been some revisions, and there's no longer, and who am I looking for here? Is it, just a minute, Ms. Linker? I take it there's no longer any staff concerns on this application, is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff have changed our concerns to only being related to the rear yard setback, and that's just some concerns on that front. Staff don't have any concerns related to the trees, as that was resolved. There are discussions on Friday and the revised plans that we received yesterday, and if the conditions that we've requested are imposed.
Okay, so that information, though, we don't have, or we haven't had a chance to digest on any of this. So can you just tell me, did you receive a new site plan? Is that what happened as a result of this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant can go through the specific details. Staff received a revised tree information report that further demonstrated how the trees that were proposed to be retained would be retained through the construction, to give staff further reassurance that the proposed severance would be feasible in terms of making developable lots and retaining one of the trees in the rear yard where the lot is supposed to be developed.
Okay, so we don't have a revised planning report from you on that. You know, the committee takes trees very seriously. So we're wondering if it would be possible to adjourn this application for 2 weeks to give an opportunity. I'm not sure how many neighbors may have had a chance to see the revisions to the tree information report. So I'm thinking, would it be possible to get a revised report from you, Ms. Linker, in 2 weeks' time on this, providing us that new information?
Yes, my apologies, Madam Chair. In the original report, we kind of laid out 3 scenarios, just expecting the last minute information to come in. So we are kind of going under option 2 of, if we receive this information, then those concerns are resolved and we only would have outstanding concerns related to the massing of the rear yard setback from a planning perspective. And that would address all the other concerns, and the same conditions would be applied either way. We also sent an email to the committee just reflecting that one more time, but we can provide an updated staff report.
Okay, so that's sort of the issue, right? Is that the committee is going on the basis of an email received today. So Ms. Adams, here's what the committee is proposing. We would prefer to have as full of information as we can. If there's been revisions and things have been negotiated with you, then we would like a revised report on this, because the trees are an important aspect of any development. So we would like to see that revised report for the next meeting, which is October 16th. Would that be acceptable to you, Ms. Adams?
Thanks, Madam Chair. We were prepared to make a presentation today, but if that is the request from the committee, then we can accommodate that.
Okay, it's just that new information on the floor that's of something like, you know, forestry services. We would prefer to actually get that in our report and get that reflection. Okay. So, okay, any comments from the committee on the proposal for adjournment to October 16th? Okay, is there anyone in the audience or online who wants to speak to the adjournment, not to the application? Come on down. Hello, would you be Mr. Gregg?
No, I'm Andrew Bauman. I reside at 286 Homewood, which is right next door to the proposed development. So you're saying that I can't speak to the proposed submission?
No, we're
Today?
talking about an adjournment because there's been changes
Okay,
from the proposal that was in our packages, and we only got word of a revision to this morning. So the panel needs more time than that to reflect on some of these technical matters. So yeah, so we're proposing an adjournment. Do you have any comments on the adjournment?
no, I fully support the adjournment. I would like to reflect comments that have already been submitted to this committee from our community on Homewood and the Glebe. So I guess if I have concerns, can I speak at the adjournment of this committee? The next
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you so much. Anyone else? Comments on the adjournment to October 16th? Anyone online? Okay, so with that, oh, come on down. Yeah. I'm gonna need your full name and your municipal address, please.
Wood. I live at 59 Findlay Avenue, which is right behind 290 Homewood, one of the houses right behind. I just want to clarify, will we neighbors, several of whom are here today, will we get information emailed to us about these changes?
So I think the answer is we can make that happen.
Yes, please.
So, but we're gonna wait for planning staff to revise the report so they can
Okay.
reflect the new comments. And then I'm gonna look to Mr. Garrett in terms of what would be the right process to ensure that the residents do get that revised report.
Sorry, Madam Chair. So if there is, I understand that a revised tree information report, perhaps, either the applicant could distribute that. I'm not sure that it was filed with the committee. If we have it, we can make it available on the online agenda for October 16th.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Adams, of course, you can also make that information available if as soon as you receive it as well. And I would encourage some discussion between you and the neighbors perhaps before the 16th of October. Okay, anyone else before we go? We haven't even voted on the agenda, so the adjournment yet. So anyone else that wants to talk about the adjournment? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else. So members, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, it is unanimous. We are adjourning this item to October 16th. Thank you very much, and we'll see you then. Okay, that takes us then to applications number 5 and 7, which are our unopposed applications. So I'm just going to make a call out there in general. Does anybody want to speak to either 296 Manor or 130 Kenilworth and 270 or 372A Holland? Anybody want to speak to those applications? Because otherwise, okay, seeing no one wanting to speak to those applications, members of the panel, all those in favor of granting both applications? All right, so for the record, it's unanimous. Both those applications are granted by the committee. Thank you. So we've, okay. So now I think we're going to go in some order here. We're going to go to number 1, 497 Roosevelt. Looking for Ms. Murray, I believe. Is Ms. Murray online? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I apologize for the lighting. I'm joining remotely from a conference.
Yeah,
You can hear me okay?
Oh, yes, we can hear you fine. That's
Okay,
great.
perfect.
We're
Thank you.
not going to request a presentation from you, but I do believe there's a couple of housekeeping changes that we have to work through here. So to the notice I'm talking about in particular. So For B, we're going to change the wording. We're proposing to change the wording. Need you to confirm your acceptance of this. So the wording is going to go from under B, to permit an interior, striking out additional rear yard area of 30% and in bracket 6.56 meters and bracket of lot width by 30% of lot depth, whereas the bylaw requires 30% of lot width by 30%, bracket 12.76 meters on bracket of the depth of the adjacent property. Can you confirm that wording, please?
Yes,
All right. So with that, I think that's our only,
I have not done an affidavit of the sign posting. That's the other thing that was missing.
so we're going to have to do that. I haven't had to do that in so long, Ms. Murray. I can't tell you.
Sorry.
That was going to be a trick to find the wording so that I can actually do this.
I apologize. I usually I've been coming in person and bringing paper copies, but.
Okay, just a minute. I think I've got it. Oh, all right. Well, so Mr. Garrett's faster than I am. Okay, so reading this to, just want to make sure. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies? So A. B, that it was there for the prescribed numbers of days before the hearing as required by the act. And C, that the sign was at all times clearly visible and legible. Can you either swear or affirm?
Yes, I affirm that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Murray, on that. Okay, so on your application, no presentation required, as I mentioned, so we can go straight to questions from panel members on this application. Anyone? Just a minute, let me catch up, see if I had any myself. Okay, no, it seems pretty straightforward. If there's no comments then from anybody, I don't have anybody on my speakers list on this, Ms. Murray. Even though, let's see, is there anyone oh, I see Mr. Gray. Come on down, Mr. Gray. I didn't have you on my speakers list, but I saw your name and I thought, I bet you Mr. Gray is going to be here today. So, okay.
So,
go ahead.
Tim Gray, Gray, 190 West Village Private with the Westboro Community Association. We had a concern about the front of the corner side setback and why it was below the 4.5. So we kind of reached out to Ms. Horn and she gave us the correct bylaw for us to understand it. So we don't have any concerns with the project at all now. It's a good, well-designed building, excellent builder with a great reputation. So we're 100% behind it. So
We love to hear that.
I love to tell you that too.
Okay. With that, anyone else want to speak to the application? Come on down, please.
My name's Marnie Beaubien. I've been in this room many times and I live right next door to the house and my husband and I are very pleased with the plans and we're okay with the variance. So I just want to put that on record.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Yeah, it's good to hear the in support as much as it is to hear in opposition. Okay, anyone else? They're online. Okay, with that, then I think committee, if nobody has any questions, Ms. Murray, would you like any final words before we go to a vote?
No, the only thing I might ask is whether it's possible to get an oral decision, but I'm in your hands. So
I think the committee is prepared to vote. So all those in favor? All right, so Ms. Murray, it's unanimous, so you did get your oral. Granting of the application, of course, you'll get it in writing within the 10 days.
perfect. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks.
Okay, that takes us to number 3 and 4. We're going to deal with these together. Looking for Agent Kelly.
New Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. So I take it Mr. Kelly's down. You're Mr. Kelly. And just for the record, Mr. Chown has also joined the speaker's desk. So I think, was this one that we wanted a presentation, folks? Yeah, okay, yes, this is. So the committee had a chance to look at the information, but there's a lot of moving parts in this, the combined application. So the floor is yours, Mr. Kelly.
So
Go
thank you,
ahead.
Madam Chair. I'd also note you've recorded that my colleague Murray Chown from Novatech is here. We're also joined by our client Ravi Shingavi from Antilia Homes. And Astrid. Oh, and Astrid Nielsen, tree consultant, is also here.
Can I get you to move the microphone forward because your heart a little difficult to hear?
Hopefully I'm not too raspy. I'm a little bit ill at the moment. So the slides are before us, so thank you very much for that. I'll just also request if I may go a little bit over time. This is quite an extensive presentation, so.
So yeah, 5 times 2.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So
So thank you for hearing us today. As I stated, I'm here with Murray, our client Ravi, and tree consultant Astrid Nielsen to present applications for consent and minor variance on the properties located at 265 Churchill and 325 Bloomfield. Next slide, please. It's back one more, please. I think there's a back 2 more slides, so forward. There, no, we're way too far. Second slide in the order, please. Back a couple more, please. One more, please. There we go. Perfect. So I'll just start with a bit of context. The subject site is located in the Westboro Beach neighborhood to the north of Scott, to the south of Lanark, to the east of Royal, and to the west of the Beach Grove Avenue multi-use path. Subject site is comprised of 2 lots. 265 Churchill Avenue North is the corner lot, and 325 Bloomfield Avenue is the interior lot. Subject site is designated neighborhood in the involving neighborhood overlay in the City of Ottawa official plan. And the subject site is also zoned residential 3rd density subzone EE in the zoning bylaw. And in that zone, long semi-detached dwellings are permitted use. Next slide, please. So looking at the site plan, we would note that the building permits were issued on April 22nd, 2024 for the construction of 2 of the long semi-detached dwellings. And they're located on lot 1 and lot 4. The previous detached dwellings on each property have been demolished. Excavation has taken place and footings have been poured for the approved buildings on the property. So with that, 1 2-story long semi-detached dwelling and 3 3-story long semi-detached dwellings are proposed. A total of 6 dwelling units will be provided in each long semi. So that's 3 on the front and 3 on the rear of each long semi for a total of 24 dwelling units as part of the proposed development. We'll also note that 6 of the proposed units are going to be family-oriented 3-bedroom units, which, as many of you know, are becoming increasingly rare as part of new developments in the city. The proposed dwellings will each have frontage on Bloomfield Avenue, and shared driveways between lots 1 and 2 and between lots 3 and 4 will provide access to parking spaces located in the rear yard off of Bloomfield Avenue. And also just note that 3 parking spaces are provided for each proposed building, so 12 spaces in total. Next slide, please. So this image before you is just a rendering of the design intent and the materials as a representation of what will be constructed. The exact materials and color palette are not finalized at this stage. So the proposed building materials have been chosen to ensure that the dwellings will fit well within the existing streetscape, while also providing a sense of variety along the Churchill and Bloomfield frontages. Next slide, please. With respect to trees, there will be 8 trees planted on the site, 4 of which will be planted along the Churchill frontage and 4 along the Bloomfield frontage in front of each building. So 4 in total along each frontage. And then also in response to comments from the community, our client has been working diligently with residents along the rear property line to provide landscape screening, and he's also offered to plant a tree in each rear yard. The exact locations are to be determined, so the 3 that you see on neighboring properties to the rear will be moved around based on coordination with neighbors. A total of 5 of the trees have been confirmed with neighbors and with the community association, and they'll be planted on neighboring properties or in somewhere in the Westboro Beach community. And 2 additional trees have also been offered to neighbors, and I'm just waiting responses from those owners. Next slide, please. Just quickly with respect to proximity to transit, subject site is located within 550 meters walking distance of the planned Westboro LRT station. So having this proximity to transit, the proposed development has been designed to maximize the number of dwelling units that are permitted through provisions of the Planning Act. And with that, I'll start walking through the consent application. So next slide, please. So severance application 1 will sever part 5 on the draft reference plan from 325 Bloomfield and add this part to 265 Churchill. This application will add 0.98 meters of frontage along Bloomfield and 30.7 square meters of land to the property at 265 Churchill. This proposed lot addition application will be perfected prior to completing the severance applications listed as 2, 3, 4, and 5, which I'm about to go through. So next slide, please. Severance application 2 will create the parcels labeled as part 1 and part 2 on the draft reference plan. These parts will have a total area of 351.6 square meters, a depth of 30.2 meters, and a frontage of 11.6 meters on Bloomfield. Next slide, please. Severance application 3 will create parcels labeled as part 3, 4, and 5 on the draft reference plan. These parts will have a total area of 278.9 square meters, a depth of 30.2 meters, and a frontage of 9.2 meters on Bloomfield Avenue. Next slide, please. Severance application 4 will create the parcels labeled as part 6 and part 7. Part 6 and part 7 will have a total area of 278.9 square meters, a depth of 30.2 meters, and a frontage of 9.2 meters on Bloomfield. Next slide, please. And finally, severance application 5 will create parcels labeled as 8 and 9 on the draft reference plan. They'll have a total area of 297.7 square meters, a depth of 30.2 meters, and a frontage of 9.9 meters on Bloomfield. So in summary, each lot will be occupied by 1 long semi-detached dwelling, and easements are required on each proposed lot to provide shared access between to parking located in the rear yard. The proposal does not necessitate the construction of new public infrastructure, including roads and services, and the plan of subdivision is not required for the proper and orderly development of the municipality. Both severances are within an urban area, and have regard for matters of provincial interest. Both severances are not premature and are in line with the public interest. Severances conform to policies of the City of Ottawa official plan with regards to infill intensification, and the proposed severances will result in lot widths and lot areas for the newly created parcels that are compatible with existing land use patterns and the lot fabric of the neighborhood. So with all of that, the proposed severance meet the criteria of subsection 5124 of the Planning Act and represent good land use planning. Next slide, please. So with respect to the requested variances, lot 1, just note that it fully conforms with provisions of the zoning bylaw. And I'll go through the variances. So variance A, E, and I requests a reduced lot width of 9.2 meters for lots 2 and lots 3, and a reduced lot width of 9.9 meters for lot 4, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 10 meters for a long semi.
So,
Variances.
Mr. Kelly, I'm really sorry to interrupt. I just have a quick question for you on that, because I've been trying to rack my brain around it. And if you can clarify, then I can concentrate on the rest.
Sure, yeah, lots going on.
So you have a building permit already issued for lot 4, is that correct?
1 and 4, yes.
And you still require minor variances on 4, but you got the building permit somehow issued? I guess that part's just sticking for me.
It's coming, so it'll be explained in the following portions of the.
All right, go ahead.
Well, we'll just jump in quickly. That building permit has been issued for the existing lot. The existing lot is much wider than 10 meters and much larger in area. So the building permit has been issued on the basis of the existing lot on Bloomfield. We only need this relief to get lot 3.
I understand. Okay, so it's only because after the severance, you'll have nonconformity on it. All right. Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that. Just stuck with me for a minute.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
It's good to clarify. So I think I'm at variances B, F, and J. So they request a reduced lot area of 278.9 square meters for lot 2 and 3, and a reduced lot area of 297.7 square meters for lot 4, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum lot area of 300 square meters for a long semi. Variances C and G request a reduced interior side yard setback of 0.6 meters on one side of both lots 2 and 3, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 1.2 meters for a long semi. Variances D, H, and K request an increased building height of 11.6 meters for lot 2 and 11.7 meters for lot 3 and 11.8 meters for lot 4, whereas the bylaw requires a maximum building height of 11 meters or permits a maximum building height of 11 meters for a long semi. Next slide, please. So just with respect to the rationale and 4 tests, the first test for a minor variance is that the general intent and purpose of the official plan is maintained. So the subject site is located within the evolving overlay. Section 5.6.1.1, policy 1A of the official plan states that the evolving overlay will be applied generally to the properties that have a lot line along a minor corridor, lands within 150 meters from the boundary of a hub or a Main Street designation, and to lands within a 400-meter radius of a rapid transit station. So the proposed development on the subject site is within walking distance of Scott Street is designated Main Street corridor in the official plan. Subject site is a suitable location for intensification, being located within 400 meters radius and within a 550-meter walking distance of the planned Westboro LRT station. Policy 3A of section 5.6.1 of the official plan, which is shown before you, states that the city will be supportive of applications for low-rise intensification that seek to move beyond the development standards of the underlying zone. So the proposed development is a suitable location to move beyond the development standards of the underlying R3 EE zone and will contribute to achieving intensification objectives by providing a reduced lot width, lot area, and interior side yard setbacks, as well as a minor increase to permitted building height on 3 of the 4 proposed lots. Proposed development on the subject site is designed to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood context, while contributing to gentle intensification of the urban area. And with that, the minor variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan.
So you have about a minute left, Mr. Kelly.
I'll buzz through as quick as I can. Second test for minor variance is that the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is maintained. So the subject site is zoned R3EE, which permits long semi-detached dwellings. Proposed development meets the performance standards for front and rear yard setback, soft landscaping on front and rear, and interior side yard setbacks on lots 1 and 4. And actually with that, with the 1 minute left, I might actually kind of jump through this and just get to the building height. So if I skip down 2 more slides, please. It's kind of the main point I wanted to make about building height. So with respect to variances D, H, and K, requesting an increased building height of 11.6 meters for lot 2, an increased maximum building height of 11.7 meters for lot 3, and an increased maximum building height of 11.8 meters for lot 4, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum building height of 11 meters. So there's 2 main points here to consider. First, the existing municipal sanitary sewer in Bloomfield Avenue, it has a shallow depth, which is approximately 1.5 meters below grade. So to avoid the requirement for pumping, the underside of footing elevation for the proposed buildings has to be approximately 1.5 meters above the proposed grades at foundation. So that's the first main point. The second main point is that the buildings are proposed to be developed using a modular design, which will increase construction quality and efficiency. So as highlighted on the picture before you in pink, modular construction requires the use of additional structural elements for the purposes of shipping and on-site assembly, which uses a standard 9-foot ceiling height inside the building. By using that, modular construction results in a minor increase to the maximum height requirements for a 3-story building when compared to conventional construction on lots 2, 3, and 4, which you would see in the comparison there on the figure before you. So based on the challenges presented by the existing depth of the sanitary sewer and increased building height requirements to facilitate modular construction on the site, an increase to the maximum permitted building height of less than 1 meter supports intensification and is compatible with the overall form, scale, and streetscape characteristics of the neighborhood. And then if you'd like me to continue, I can go through the 4 tests. But...
I think so panel members have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we're going to get to the rest of your presentation just through questions anyway.
Understood.
So with that, can I have the gallery view back, please? Thank you. Questions from the committee, please. All right, I've got a few. Okay, where were they? So just to clarify, how many units in total are we proposing?
So there will be 2 additional dwelling units in each of the units of each long semi-detached dwelling. So there'll be 3 units at the front, 3 units at the back, for a total of 6 units in each long semi, for a total of 24 units across the entire project.
Okay, thank you, because I actually couldn't find that math anywhere. Sort of kind of, deduced it, but it wasn't in your report, I don't believe, the actual unit count. Okay, so the other question I had is, I think it's in the planner's report, but is parking required for this proposal?
Madam Chair, parking is not required for this project. Parking is always an issue when we're dealing with these infill projects. So that we are providing 3 spaces for 6 units on each property. As Mr. Kelly mentioned in his presentation, on lots 2, 3, and 4, there will be a 3-bedroom family-oriented unit in both the front and the back of each of those buildings. So there will be 2 family-oriented units in each of the buildings on lots 2, 3, and 4. I think it's only reasonable to expect that those tenants will each need a parking space. So 2 of those 3 parking spaces are going to be taken up by the tenants in the family oriented units. Of the remaining 4 units, we are providing 1 parking space for the remaining 4 units in each of those buildings. So we're providing 3 parking spaces for 6 units. The discussion always is, well, you don't have to provide parking, so don't provide parking, and then you end up creating an on-street parking challenge, which in my experience at least, the community association and the neighbors get quite upset about when they visualize the number of vehicles that may be parked on the street as a result of this development. I think that what we're proposing in terms of parking, although it's not required and it is not providing 1 space per unit, is providing 1 space for every 2 units in these buildings, is a reasonable and a suitable and appropriate approach to take in terms of providing parking for this project. So the short answer to your question, no, parking is not required. The long answer to your question is we believe quite strongly that it's appropriate to provide the 3 parking spaces for each building. We are still providing and meeting the bylaw requirements with respect to the maximum hard surface and minimum soft landscaping in the rear yard. We're not seeking any relief from the zoning bylaw with respect to parking.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chan, for that. And I do agree. I think units that are more family-oriented, 3 bedrooms plus, is something that is very much needed in our community. It's not just that we're short of housing, we're short of that particular housing typology. So it's great to hear that that's happening. I'm going to go up to another question at this point. Looking for forestry services. If they can, is it Ms. Young? Good afternoon, Ms. Young.
Good afternoon.
So Ms. Young, I'm going to ask you this question. It's going to apply to, I think, another application as well, where we're seeing, so the recommendation we're seeing is for plantings. Let's see, how is it? That for, because the parking is taking up some much needed green space for the trees, we're seeing now this this move, and 2 of the applications I think before us today, that these be provided off-site. And so we're not familiar with that. Can you tell us how that works exactly?
I can do my best. So this came about through discussion with the applicant on this specific file, where they feel very strongly that the parking needs to be there. that would have been the easier choice to keep the trees on the site itself. But I understand they've been working with the neighbors and the community association to find other options to plant trees, including the ones facing the rear yard of this specific site. So in recognition of that effort to work with the neighbors and to keep the canopy cover that's needed within the same neighborhood, we are including that option in the condition. I'm hoping you received the revised condition that just would have come in this morning.
Yeah, we did
Sorry.
receive like a whole revised report from this morning. And it's always tough to, we go on the basis of all the information up until, and then this morning we get new information. Now we're trying to wrap our minds around, well, okay, if we're going to be considering this, how's this one going to work? And I think, I'm going to let the committee members jump in at some point, but, we've seen applications where we've adjourned them until the applicants have negotiated permission with a neighbor to remove a tree. And now we're conditioning, we'll go out in the neighborhood and we're not sure even whether there's a radius, or how does that work? And what does, how would you clear that condition? Is it that you need a legal agreement between whoever is the owner of the property who's going to accept that compensation tree? Or how's that logistics going to work, Ms. Young? We're still really unclear about that.
Thank you. And those are all very good questions for sure. We are hoping to, we've included some leeway in this to, they can provide the majority of the required compensation trees on their property. Those are the 8 trees that they're showing in the right of way. They're all small trees because of hydro on both frontages. So that was our main concern, is that there were no large trees. So we did include in this condition that we would like all of the off-site trees to be large growing trees in order to be counted in this. And essentially, in order to clear the conditions, I will need, I will need plans showing where all of these trees are going. The applicant has provided emails, some exchanges with the neighbors and the community association, saying that they are, working toward an agreement, but we need actual written permission from any adjacent neighbors where these trees will go, and details on what the trees are and that they are the appropriate size and species.
So are any securities being requested as part of this? Because even if you put it as a condition that says, we need you to provide us with, written, maybe an email from an adjacent owner that says, yes, there's room in my backyard, go ahead and add, a tree there. But these things can change. If that's all it takes to clear the condition, it doesn't mean that that's actually going to come to fruition. So how are we tracking this? And are we asking for any kind of security so that in a year's time, post completion of construction, that compensation tree hasn't been planted, that we would use that money to plant it ourselves somewhere? How are we, wouldn't that make some sense? I don't see that in the condition.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for the question. It does make a lot of sense, and it is something we would normally try to do. Again, this just came about yesterday, so we haven't really had time to come up with a fulsome condition that would cover all of these eventualities. We have in the past taken securities of $400 per tree to be planted. The difficulty here is we don't have a definite number of trees to be planted, so that even just the number of trees could be something that the applicant could clarify and we could include in here, but
yeah, that actually would be very helpful. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the compensation trees under the hydro wires don't count because they're not expected to contribute to the urban canopy as per the official plan policy. Is that correct?
I would say they count, they just don't really meet or show progression toward the official plan goal of 40% canopy cover. So we don't have a way of saying, small trees count toward half. but this
What
is
I'd be
just to
afraid of
yeah, sorry, go
setting
ahead.
precedents, right? We don't want to
Yes.
be saying you can meet the spirit and intent of that official plan policy by planting a bush.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
kind of not where I want to go. So, okay, I'm going to go back to Mr. Kelly then and ask Mr. Kelly whether or not you actually have a tree count. Because where I want to go with this is just to add to the condition that securities be posted because of the concern about follow through post-construction.
So Madam Chair, that was a very helpful discussion. A couple of comments. There's nothing in the tree bylaw that requires us to replace trees with large canopy trees. There are 5 trees that have been removed from the property. Staff have informed us in their comments that the compensation requirement is 9 trees. We are showing 8 trees on the site. It's not our client's fault that there's hydro lines and he can't plant large canopy trees on site. That's just a reality. But there's no obligation on his part to plant 8 or 9 large canopy trees. So I just want to be clear on that. It would be nice for all of them to be large canopy trees, and I acknowledge that, but the reality is he can't do that on the site, and that's not his fault. That's just the reality because we've got overhead hydro lines on both frontages. Now, having said all of that, how many trees are we talking about? I'm going to look over my shoulder in just a moment, but I think as of this moment, I think we have 3 commitments to neighbors. Yes, so we have 3 commitments to immediate neighbors. And when I say immediate neighbors, that's 1 behind, 1 across Churchill, and 1 across Bloomfield, who have accepted that what I would say is the very generous offer of our client to plant trees. So we're now up to 11 when all that's required is 9. Beyond that, our client is in discussions with the community association, and their representatives are here this afternoon to work with them to plant 2 additional trees. So that's 13 trees when only 9 are required. If you want to add a provision or a condition, add to the condition requiring security, I would suggest that that security is for the 9th tree. The rest are a bonus to everybody out of the generosity of our client. It's not to fulfill any obligation under the bylaw or anything else. So if you want.
Mr. Chair, just because I want to keep the discussion moving and I can see that Member Coakley's hands up, but all right, so you're agreeing to 1. So if we were to add the security, $400 would be what you would be willing to support. Okay. Member Coakley.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to react a little bit to that last comment. I fully accept and understand that it's not anybody's fault where the hydro lines are. Hydro puts the hydro lines where the hydro lines need to be. That being said, your client is proposing a plan, a proposed construction that you require permission from. And if you were to come through with something differently, then maybe the impact on trees would be different. So it's not, it's not Deus ex machina that's at work here. It is a conscious decision on the part of your client, what he wants to build and the impact of that. So again, I accept that the hydro lines can't be moved, and I accept that limits what trees can be planted in the vicinity of hydro lines. But to suggest that that absolves him of all responsibility for other trees, I think is pushing it just a little bit.
Madam Chair, if I may be, I just want to be clear. We are not seeking any relief in terms of the corner side yard setback. So the space that's available to plant trees on Churchill is the space that's available to plant trees. And we're planting as many trees as large as possible along Churchill. Along Bloomfield, we are not seeking relief in a front yard setback. We are not seeking relief in terms of permitted projections. We're providing the fully required front yard setback. We're providing the fully required soft landscaping in the front yard. We're providing as much space as is required under the zoning bylaw, and then we're planting as many trees as possible. I don't want anybody to think that our client is trying to be difficult or is trying to avoid planting trees. He is only doing what he's permitted to do under the zoning bylaw, and the result is what the result is.
So, Mr. Chown, without getting into the merits of the parking spaces, would you not agree that were there no parking spaces being proposed, that that green area would be sufficient to meet the tree requirement?
If we weren't providing parking, we could provide more trees. That's a fact.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from panel members at this point? Yes, Member Coakley.
Sorry, if I could just follow up with Ms. Young, because as you said, Madam Chair, this issue seems to be appearing on another file as well. Conceptually, I don't have a problem with we really would like a tree here, but if we can plant it over there, a tree's a tree, achieves the purpose, absolutely fine. And I accept that in this particular instance that, the applicant has already made efforts to work with neighbours to identify places where trees can be planted. But would there be any sort of, geographic limits to where you would accept an alternative tree being planted, Ms. Young? I mean, if this comes to us in the future, perhaps with an applicant who hasn't made as much effort as the current one has, 250 meters, 350 within a radius of something like that, presumably planting a tree out in Kanata. This was kind of my somewhat facetious comment in our pre-meet. Presumably planting a tree out in Kanata wouldn't meet your concerns. So where, is there a geographic zone that you would like to see these trees being planted if alternate trees are the solution?
Thank you for the question. That is a good point. And I do agree there would be some limits. I don't think I'd want to put in, a certain radius or an actual number, but I think if it's within the neighborhood or certainly any of the adjacent properties surrounding this particular site, I think that would be really what we're looking for, and perhaps input from the community association if they have a specific area in mind.
So, Ms. Young, just on this whole point then, it sounds like there was a little bit of negotiation that went on at kind of the last minute on this. I actually don't want to see this condition come back without having a lot more answers about it. So I don't know how the other members feel, but I truly would prefer to see a more well thought out, not that it wasn't well thought out, Ms. Young, it's just we've had some questions about some of these things. Securities seem to make a lot of sense. Geographic boundaries seem to make a lot of sense. So we just want to have some comfort that there's that these things are workable going forward. All right, Member Blatherwick. You're on mute.
That better? Mr. Kelly, Mr. Chown, I'm assuming that you have reviewed the correspondence from the Westboro Beach Community Association.
Not sure we've seen the latest, Member Blatherwick, but we certainly have seen email correspondence.
This was on
between
the
the community
17th of September 17th.
Yes.
Okay. So to their questions, since we don't have site plan anymore on projects like this, what is the plan for snow removal on this site? Dwellings.
It will be trucked off site on when there's significant accumulations.
And they had some concerns, I guess, about soffit lighting. Is there any intent to put that type of lighting on the roof line of these houses?
Yeah. Let me start by saying, Member Blatherwick, that we've met with the community association and we've gone through their concerns and comments. They obviously can speak for themselves. They're here this afternoon, but to the best of my knowledge, we've addressed all of their concerns. With respect to lighting, we've indicated that the lighting will be on motion detectors so that the lighting will only come on when there's activity in the rear yards, and that lighting will be directed down so it doesn't spill onto adjacent properties.
And there's going to be adequate garbage and recycling.
Yes, sir.
Take it on site. And what about a solid fence, sandwich board fence along the north property line, the east property line, and the west property line? You're going to have vehicles back there, headlights through a lot of light. And quite frankly, that would be upsetting to me if I was living directly behind or beside this without having a solid 2.1 meter fence. Has that been agreed to with in discussions with the community association and the neighbors?
So there are no neighbors on either side. On one side is Churchill Avenue, and on the other side is a city works yard, and our client has agreed to provide a fence on the rear to screen the parking.
What kind of a fence?
I don't think we've talked about the details of it, but it'll be sufficient to screen headlights.
All right, that means a sandwich board fence, Mr. Chown. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chown.
Thank you.
Member Keklikan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question to the agent, I think you acknowledged, and I think we all realize that the site is within, as you mentioned, 550 meters of transit, and it's a walkable community. And you're providing 3 parking spaces per lot, 2 of which I think you explained, and I believe it's an assumption that it's family-oriented units, so therefore a vehicle is required. Would the third be, would there be flexibility in not providing 3 and going to the 2 for the family-oriented units?
The short answer is no. And the concern that we have, and this is not unique to this property, sir. As I think you know, and other members of the panel know, that Novatech have been involved with infill projects specifically in Westboro and the Westboro Beach community for probably well over a decade now. And Mr. Shungavi as well has done numerous infill projects in Westboro and Westboro Beach. We'd all love to believe that people don't need cars anymore, but that's not the reality. We're not there yet. We may get there, and with any luck, we will get there. And when we do get there, then that additional parking space probably won't be required and could be converted to soft landscaping and a tree planted. But in the short to medium term, it is unrealistic to suggest that we don't need that third parking space. There are some people who would suggest to the committee that we need 1 parking space for every single one of those units. That is to say, 6 parking spaces per building. We're not providing that. There's not room to provide that, but it's, I think, too early to be suggesting that we only provide parking for the 3-bedroom family-oriented units and that we provide no parking for the other 4 units in each building. We're not required to provide parking, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't provide parking. The market is such that it's extremely difficult to rent units without parking. Yes, you can rent units. I'm not saying you can't rent units without parking, but to take your suggestion, we would then have, trying to do the 12, at least 12 units without parking. And to lease those 12 units without parking will be incredibly difficult. And that's not the object of the exercise. The object of the exercise is to provide housing, marketable housing that people are looking for, desperate for in this location. And if that means providing 3 parking spaces instead of 2 in the short to medium term, we need to be able to do that. It's really easy to say, why don't you just get rid of a parking space and plant more trees? That's really easy to say. But the reality is that then puts my client in a situation where he's building units that he can't rent, and that's just unacceptable.
Thank you. Just a small point, and I do appreciate the answer, and I'm not suggesting it. I was just inquiring, and I think the key word used in my mind was marketability and the marketing. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so anyone with any additional, I have one minor question, but I would like to give another chance to members. All right, very, very minor question, and I'm looking to, is it Ms. Linker at this? No, Ms. Horn, sorry. So Ms. Horn, the one thing about the parking arrangement though, that I noticed is, I'm not sure it's even functional. So you've got 3 parking spaces that are essentially parallel right up to the lot line. Is there, like, typically we see hammerheads at the end of these things to ensure that the last parking space actually can maneuver in and out of that space. Is that a standard that's been dropped by the city transportation folks, or why are we not seeing that anymore?
Thank you, Madam Tremblay. So it was reviewed by transportation, and we did not get any comments from them regarding the arrangement of parking.
So in your professional planning opinion, do you see those as being functional? The last, in particular, the last one that's up the end of the row?
So, sorry, could you put it up on the screen just to, I don't have it in front of me.
Madam Chair, if I may assist while the committee staff are trying to find the site plan.
Oh, no, okay, we've got it. All right, so I just want to give Ms. Horn a chance to finish.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Horn.
So because the parking is not, did not require minor variance, it's zoning compliant. It was not really part of our review. However, I believe it would be functional.
All right, thank you, Ms. Horn. I would hope that even if a site like this, you know, you're not looking at a variance for a particular I would still expect to see some review of the functionality of the site overall, even if minor variance isn't required. It's the sum of all the parts that makes the site work, regardless of whether minor variances are required. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So just, oh, Ms. O'Connell, did you want to, oh, sorry, Ms. O'Connell, we lost her. Did you want to pipe in there, Ms. O'Connell?
I was just going to request to understand better the nature of the challenge with the parking, because I'm looking at the plan and it looks like well, it's not dimensioned on the plan, but the aisle width between the parking spaces is sufficient for a car to back out into that aisle and then move in a forward direction down the between.
Hammerheads are typically added to provide the last car in the space the ability to back up without, you know, getting very close to the car next to them, that kind of thing. They're in my, like, I live in a brand new community, and I can tell you that the hammerheads are in. They're in throughout the development of some townhomes that we have in that area. So I know they were imposed at some point, at least through site plan. But we're not seeing them necessarily when they come to us. And I'm just wondering whether that's a bit of a change in the standard, or, you know, they're not reviewed the same way as the site plan would. That's sort of my point, Ms. O'Connell.
Fair enough. We'll take that back, and thank you.
All right, thanks so much for that. Okay, I think we've had a lot of discussion about parking. You can come back, Mr. Chown, because we've got a number of people who want to speak. And remind me, we are looking at adding a condition. We'll go through that at the end. So with that, who's on my list? We've got, just bear with me. I had a speakers list. Okay. Is there Mert and Patricia available? I'm going to need last names. That's all I have. It's very, So come on forward, but if you could introduce yourselves and provide your municipal addresses, please, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. It's Patricia Lasso, and I'm at 266 Ferndale Avenue, and I'm the co-president of the Westboro Community Association. And I'll let my Westboro Beach, excuse me, Westboro Beach. How could I forget that? Go ahead, Malt, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, bonjour. My name is Marthe Bujold. I'm at 265 Remick Avenue, and I'm also involved with the Westboro Beach Community Association.
All right, thank you. So who's taking the lead, ladies?
I'll take the lead.
All right, go
And
ahead.
Malt will fill in if I forget anything. So we have had very robust discussions amongst the community, as well as with the agent for the builder, as well as with the builder. And basically our comments center on two things: water and trees. If I could ask the staff to bring up the first slide from Jeff's presentation that sort of positions the development, the proposed development. So basically, while that slide's coming up, I just want to give you a quick overview of where the proposed development is. You'll see the Ottawa River, you'll see Selby Plain, you'll see the Ottawa Winter Trail, you'll see the elevation. You will see that water runs downhill. One of our major concerns about this 24-unit development, and we have discussed this with both the agent and the developer, is that this is a level of intensification we have not seen in our neighborhood before. The neighbors are very concerned, particularly the neighbor facing on Bloomfield, the development, of how the water runoff will be managed. We are concerned about those basement apartments, and I know one of them is higher and there is going to be a 3-story, but we still have a major concern about that. Related to that, of course, is the tree discussion that we've had, and I'm hoping I can shed a bit of light on that. You can see, she's got the slide up for us now, thank you, is that the Ottawa River is right there. You'll see the green space around the Ottawa River is Selby Plain, which is a flood-prone area. And we've had floods there as recently as about 7 years ago. And I live on Ferndale, and they are replacing all of our sewer systems now as we speak. So there's some issues there. And then running along Royal, you can't see the name there, but you'll see that there is some green space and our winter trail runs through there. And that corridor running along Royal is where we want to plant some of the trees that was mentioned. A manager of our winter trail is also a forester, and we're looking at 2 trees to be planted there. The tree lady, if I could just, that'll be in the minutes, you'll understand where we're hoping to plant them. But back to the development, I just want you to see the geography, and there is a downhill right into Bloomfield Avenue there. So we do have some concerns about stormwater and the sanitary sewers. So that is a big issue for us. And those basement apartments, I don't know. The environmental lens that we took for all of this, and we took strictly looking at the environment, we take our tree canopy extremely seriously. And we're looking at today's bylaws to stand for the next 30 years. When we look at the weather patterns and we look at the flooding that's happening, I know it's in the US and in North Carolina and Florida, we don't want that devastation. We want this building to be storm-proof. I'm not convinced that today's bylaws will do that. I'm not convinced 100%, and I'm not an engineer, but I'm hoping that the city engineers will take all of this into account. The other thing that you'll see that I have asked for in the documentation that we provided, we're looking for some cash, either from the builder or from the city, to manage our tree canopy so that we can plant trees, we can manage the invasive species, and we can mitigate some of the flooding concerns that we have. What else did I want to say? Anything I've missed?
No, I think you've covered the main points quite well.
The driveways, yeah. The other point that we have discussed with the builder and the agent for the builder is we would like to see permeable driveways. And I know it's not in the bylaws, and I know it's not a requirement. But again, to mitigate the water issues that are going to be there, we would really like to have permeable driveways that can soak up that water when we have the storms. Ravi did mention there'd be the pond effect at the back where the parking is. But I would really like to see permeable driveways there. we've been all over the trees, big issue for us, and we understand the limitations. But we really want to make sure that that water is soaked up and that canopy is maintained. That's it.
Thank you, ladies. Any questions for either one of our speakers from panel members? All right, I'm not seeing any, so thank you for your time today. Looking for anyone else who wants to speak to this matter, come on forward. Again, just your name, your full name and municipal address, please.
My name is Marnie Beaubien, and I didn't get to look at the plans because I wasn't planning to speak to this. Just many questions, but just two I'll ask. One is related to the water. A few years ago, the city of Ottawa gave us a wonderful tour of Westboro explaining about the rainwater and the water table and everything. And we walked through and they identified 2 houses that had this permeable water, and looking at the footprint of these 4 buildings and pavement, it's extreme in terms of the lack of opportunity for water to get to the water table. So their suggestion about a permeable driveway resonates with me, but I think it's a big issue, especially in Westboro. And my second, well, maybe they do have permeable driveways. I don't know, because I didn't see the plans before what this Mr. Kelly presented. So that would be good. And the second one was, I didn't think there were basement apartments. And my question was, what was happening with the 8-unit basements? How are they being used? But maybe they are apartments. I was assuming they weren't.
All right, thank you, Ms. Beaubien. They are apartments, as we heard in the count.
So it's just 2 stories above the basement apartment.
I believe that's the case in the building, and I'm looking at Mr. Keller and Mr. Chown to correct me, but I believe the building height issue is related to the sewer underground rather
Yes,
than
exactly.
to increased.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, to be clear though, the unit adjacent to Churchill is a basement plus 2 stories. The other 3 are a basement plus 3 stories. The 3-bedroom unit occupies 2 floors.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chown, for that clarification. Okay, is there anyone else either online or online or in person? With that, then there's no further questions from the members of the committee. Before I give you a chance to recap, I mentioned we are looking for an added condition. So the way I think we understand it, and again, you can correct me, but Churchill will actually have, with the addition of this one that I'm about to propose to, 12 conditions. And Roosevelt is going to have, Bloomfield is going to have 10 of the conditions that are in the planning report. So 11 applies to Churchill, not to Bloomfield. And I'll read to you what I'm proposing as the 12th condition, that the owner provide evidence to the satisfaction of the Secretary Treasurer that the lot line conveyance as in application D08-01-24/B00161, the lot line adjustment, be registered on title. So in other words, that condition has to be met before so it has to be met not before the others, but as part of the others. So if it's met, then they can proceed with the issuance of certificates for the other consents. So are we in agreement with the addition of that condition?
I think I followed Madam Chair, and I think that was probably a standard lot addition application. Would that be correct? Or similar to your standard lot addition conditions? But I think I'm okay with it.
Through you, Madam Chair, the standard lot line adjustment condition would be included. And this would address the logical sequence of the lot line adjustment taking place prior to the further severance, as I believe was alluded to in the presentation.
If that's the intent, I have no issue.
All right, thank you. Member Coakley?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just want to No problem, no issue with that one. But we did discuss the issue of cash in lieu for the tree, and I just wondered whether that needed to be tied down before the applicant closes.
I was going there next. So yeah, so I'm looking at condition number 9. And on condition number 9, I think what we would simply do is add a new paragraph that says that the owner agrees to submit. I'm hoping the wording comes out a little bit better than this, but the intent is that the owner agrees to provide securities for the compensation of one tree in the order of $400, something like that. Be agreeable to that?
Yes, we're agreeable to that. Madam Chair, I do want to go through the conditions. We haven't done that yet, but I am agreeable to that. Thank you.
All right, well, let's then go to number 1 and let's go through them.
I can do this hopefully quickly. Condition 1 is the standard condition dealing with cash in lieu of parkland. That's acceptable. Condition 2 dealing with separate services for the severed and retained parcels, although it's repetitive because it comes up again as another condition later on. We're okay with that. Stormwater management brief, I can assure the members of the committee that is a requirement of getting the initial building permits for the units, buildings on 1 and 4. That has already been completed to the satisfaction of the city. My preference would be to remove the condition, but because it has already been dealt with through the building permit process.
So Mr. Chan, let's finish off on that one because we heard very clearly some concerns about water and stormwater management.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to take a poll from the panel members, but I'd be inclined to say, just based on the evidence I've heard, that we would retain that. And maybe you can, in discussions with planning staff or infrastructure staff, maybe find a way to get it cleared if you feel that you've already provided that information, but I'd prefer to leave that condition in. Members of the panel, anyone in opposition to that? Okay, so everybody in agreement? That's what I'm getting. Okay, all right. So no, so I think we're going to retain number 3.
That's fine, Madam Chair. Condition 4, once again, is independent services, which I never quite understand why it appears twice in the conditions, but so be it. 5 is the requirement for an easement agreement or a joint use and maintenance agreement, which is typical for this type of development. 6 is new language with respect to noise. I hope you have the new language in front of you, and the new language is acceptable to us. 7 is a standard condition with respect to grading and drainage. 8 also is a requirement that has already been dealt with through the issuance of road cut permits for this project. As part of getting a road cut permit, our client has to post bonds with the city to ensure that he restores the street as required by the city. This condition is redundant, and what makes it frustrating for us is it requires an agreement, and getting agreements out of the city is painful and time consuming. But it's our opinion that that condition is redundant given the obligations of our client in terms of getting his road cut permit.
I think what you're saying is it's easy to clear just based on what
It's not easy to clear because it requires an agreement.
Are you not getting into an agreement in any event, Mr. Chan, on some of this? I'm looking at your site triangle. I'm looking at even the cash and lieu, like some of the stuff is covered.
None of those require an agreement.
So I'm looking to Ms. Horn then, if I could get your thoughts on removing that condition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So essentially, the road cut permit is different from the resurfacing agreement. So essentially, given the number of road cuts, an asphalt overlay will likely be required in order to, to preserve the road's integrity, essentially.
All right, thank you, Ms. Horn, for that. Members of the panel, I guess I'll go first. I'm inclined to retain it then based on the explanation. Planning staff, everybody in agreement?
Yeah.
All right, with that, then.
Okay, it's okay. We'll keep going.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I think we've spent a lot of time talking about trees, and I think that we have a fairly clear understanding with not only Ms. Young, but Nick Stowe and others at the city in terms of where we are in terms of planting trees, and we've already talked about the security of $400 for one additional tree. So we're fine with condition 9 as amended. I'll say right off the get-go, we're okay with 11 as it is. The issue we have is with 10, and if I could ask the committee staff to put up the slide that immediately follows the thank you in Mr. Kelly's package. There simply is no room to take a road widening on Bloomfield without compromising the development. The change that staff have suggested in their report to you, which instead of saying a road widening 9 meters from center line, they've now said between 6 and 9 meters. And that's, I think, because unfortunately we haven't had time to talk about it. I think the expectation here is that, well, we'll take 6 meters from center line for lots 1 and 4, and we'll take 9 meters from center line for lots 2 and 3. First, it makes no sense to take different widenings from different lots. You then end up with an irregular road allowance of no benefit to anybody. The taking, if there's going to be a taking, should be the same across all 4 lots. The 6 meters still doesn't work.
So do you have, so I'm following you. And I guess I'm wondering whether or not you have so I want to retain the requirement for road widening, but I want to make it so that this discussion can happen and that you can clear that condition on something that's more reasonable than the way that it's written right now.
So
what would you propose as a wording change?
we propose that a measuring 5.5 meters is our proposal. Across.
I would actually propose to say, measuring whatever the amount is, so that it's like, it sounds like they're.
So we did that. We went through this with panel 2 yesterday, and exact same scenario, similar scenario, the requested widening went into the existing development. The requested widening here as written went into the living room of the units on lot 1 and lot 4. So.
Okay, so 5.5 gives you that added buffer.
It allows for the building and the porch and the stairs as per the building permits, and still respects the minimum setback for a projection into a front yard of 0.6 meters. We don't want to be creating a non-conforming situation. 5.5 meters does that across all 4 lots.
Okay, I'm all right with that. I don't have a problem with that revision. Members of the panel, all those in agreement?
That's fine.
Member Coakley, do you want to? You're okay, you're indicating support?
Yeah, if that's what everybody else is willing to go with, I'm fine with that. There's no issue for me.
All right. Okay, so that one's revised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think that either Mr. Kelly or I need to make any concluding remarks, but Mr. Shangavi would like to address the committee.
Please come forward. I'm going to need your municipal address, your full name, and do we have you on our speakers list? Just a minute. Yes, I've got your full name. So just to confirm your municipal address, please.
326 Churchill Avenue.
All right, so go ahead. I'm going to give just a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it seemed like a lot of the conversation centered around trees, and we did a lot of work before today with the community, with the neighbors. We have in fact got written agreements from 2 rear yard neighbors to provide and plant 2 large growing trees. Now, what's interesting, it does seem like this is a new concept to the committee, but it's actually in the tree bylaw. So there's a section in the tree bylaw that says, if the tree cannot be planted on the same private property, it can then be planted on another private property in reasonable close proximity to the removed tree.
So, Mr. Shanda, the issue the panel had wasn't with that requirement. Our question was the operationalization of that and how that was going to work, because our interest is just to ensure that the spirit of the official plan with regards to tree canopy can be preserved. So that was what we were actually after when in our discussion about that.
Understood. And I mentioned it that it does appear that somebody in forestry contemplated sites like mine, which would not be able to provide the required compensation trees. So they wrote it in the bylaw to say, hey, if you can't do it, you are allowed to plant them nearby. And just above that paragraph in the bylaw, it also says it is preferable to plant species that attain the largest size of maturity, but it isn't a requirement. So I appreciate I'm not planting as big trees as possible because of the hydro lines, but I am still meeting city requirements and planting city approved trees.
So, from the other aspect of that, of course, that we need to consider is the official plan policies surrounding the whole tree canopy and what the intent and spirit of those policies are. In terms of considering other aspects of the site. So I understand the tree bylaw. Tree bylaw is, though, within the context of other planning tools that we have to consider in making our decision.
Understood. And I understand. My concern is there may be some trade of parking. So I've built pretty close to 24 buildings here in Westboro over the last decade. And I can tell you the number one tenant I turn away is a family who needs a parking spot. So that is almost always the case. And they say, well, can I not park on the street? My answer is always no. Some people will rent and tell them to park on the street. I don't, because I know they'll be ticketed because we do not have street parking in the areas of Westboro that I build. So that, as much as we talk about, hey, there's 3 units behind each building, there's 2 family size units. We've done this for a decade. I know the tenant base. I'm interacting with them. Young families do not rent my 3 beds because they can't park a car because we don't have spots for it. That's the fabric. The lots aren't big enough. The buildings are a certain size. And the committee has, made decisions in the past that we've respected. So I just want to make that commentary because I know one of the panel members talked about marketing. Ultimately, we're trying to attract a broad spectrum of tenants. We end up with a smaller segment of them based on the parking requirements. So I'm hoping that with the 2 rear yard neighbors who have agreed to have large growing trees planted on their property, and we're talking about in their rear lot line. So if somebody were to say, here's the lot line, tree would be on the right, now it's going to be on the left. That's the difference in terms of the placement of the tree. The canopy will still benefit effectively my development as well. So we had a requirement to plant 1 more tree. We're planting 2 in our adjacent rear yards, 1 across the street, and a number in the other portions of the neighborhood. I'm hoping that helps. I'm restating it for that purpose.
And we did hear that from your agent, Mr. Chow. So we have taken that into consideration, and we got confirmation from forestry that is in fact what they would consider, without having developed criteria around how you're going to operationalize those provisions in the bylaw. We heard from them that would be acceptable in any event. So any further comments, Mr. Shinga?
No, thank you.
All right. Any questions from the panel members to Mr. Shangavi? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. I think it's no surprise to anybody that we're reserving on this. which means that we're gonna make a decision, but post this, we're gonna reconvene. So you will get the decision in the mail within the 10 days as required by the Planning Act. So thank you, everyone, for your input, and thank you for our community association representatives for also coming forward today.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to our last application, which is number 633 Edison. Good afternoon, Mr. Yalkotzi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask a little bit of forgiveness. I arrived by train last night from a funeral at 12 midnight, so I may be a little loopy.
That's all right. That's fine. It's a good thing we kept you for last then. Okay, so before we get started, few housekeeping things to do. So my understanding is we're amending a number of the minor variances. So starting with E, I'm going to read to you the change. To permit a reduced rear yard setback of 3.84 meters or 20%. Actually, I'm not going to read the whole thing. We're changing the 4.69 to just to 4, simply 4. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, I guess I've looked at both the requests or in the planning report in terms of the minor variances, and I am quite concerned about interpretations. And as you realize today, even staff went back to the building permit interpretations of the zoning bylaw. And from that perspective, I'm always trying to err on the side of caution for my clients, because we have seen, unfortunately, different interpretations from the planning staff that deal with the Committee of Adjustment and the planning staff that deal with zoning at building permit stage. And my preference would be to retain the wording that we have, both of the variances that are suggested not to be required or to be modified are reducing the variance request. However,
wait a minute, Mr. So 2 of them are reducing. So I'm looking at E and I. The change there is from 4.69 meters to 4.
Yes.
And you're saying you're not in agreement with that. You want to retain the 4.69 for both?
Yes, because again, I'm concerned that the way that
That's okay.
building branch.
I understand. You're just saying you want to retain it.
Yes.
The removal of F and A. Well, F is to permit an increased building height. So staff is suggesting you don't need that.
Again, I'm concerned that because of the way of the wording of the zoning bylaw, that the second northerly semi-detached unit is not a corner unit any longer, and is because we're proceeding with severance as part of this application, now becomes an interior lot. And under the Westboro overlay, the requirement is that it be a 10-meter height, similar to what we have for the detached dwelling, which is also now an interior lot.
So, but if you're doing 10, then you're in keeping with the bylaw.
Well, we're not doing 10 on the 2 semis, so we're doing the higher height that's permitted on the corner under the Westboro overlay.
Okay, so Mr. Yalkotzi, do you have a building that's 10.7 meters high?
Yes.
All right, then I'm gonna go to, let's see, hang on, I gotta go all the way back to my planner's report. Where do we have? Ms. Horn, thank you. Okay, so can you tell me why you were looking to eliminate that minor variance?
Thank you, Madam Tremblay. So essentially, eliminating the minor variance for Oh. Okay, yes. So essentially, it appeared that it was no longer required.
The note here, no, I feel like my, is it on?
No.
I'm putting it on. Not on. Battery? All right. All right, can folks can hear me. So here's my concern. We are now trying to figure out what this application is all about for minor variances. When this discussion should have happened with staff before we got here. So I don't want to get into a debate now with staff and put them on the spot in terms of trying to figure out which one of these work and which ones don't. So I'm actually quite inclined to adjourning this application for 2 weeks to get that clarity. Because we want to know what we're dealing with. And then I need to actually figure out, are we into recirculation based on any of this discussion? I don't know. I'm hoping no, because you've got the 10.7. So hopefully we're not asking for any increased relief or reducing the request. But, you know, I'm a little uncomfortable, Mr. Yalkantzi, having these discussions and putting staff on if you haven't had that discussion with them already and resolved what it is that you really want to put forward and why. I don't think it's a discussion that's appropriate for before the committee. I think we need to resolve these things ahead. Before you answer, maybe Ms. O'Connell has the answer. Go ahead, please.
I was going to suggest, given the applicant's submission that he'd like to retain the variance that we said is not required. Essentially, it's no harm, no foul from staff either way. If it's put forward as it's written in the application as submitted, and it's not required in the end, it doesn't matter to us, essentially.
Yeah, but you know, the whole point of pre-consultation and going through the process is to identify what's really required to enable the project. That's what the committee's here for, is to provide relief from the zoning bylaw that's reasonable and aligned with what's being proposed. But to think that we're now into a debate about what that minor variance is supposed to be I mean, that's a discussion between staff before we get here so that we can get confirmation that yes, what's being proposed enables the project. It's not over and above what's required in terms of relief. Because we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to give relief that's over and above what's required. So I don't know. I'm looking for thoughts from the committee on this. Does anybody feel? I obviously have an opinion on it, but does anybody else have an opinion on it or want to comment?
Madam Chair, I can probably help a little bit here now.
Can I'm just waiting.
I'm going to accept the revisions. All right. We're on the record now. Quite happy with that. We will accept the revisions requested by planning staff and reduce the minor variance requirements as indicated in the planning report.
All right, so I'm getting from you accept all of the modifications to E, F, I, and A as suggested by staff.
Correct.
All right, okay, now we can move on. Thank you.
Sorry.
So Mr. Yalkantzi, you have to have these discussions with staff before you get here.
I did, Madam Chair. I did.
You did,
Oh,
okay,
yes.
So why, I guess I find it very strange then that we don't have any dialogue about, like, we don't have any direction on why then there's we need that information, right? Okay, if you're accepting them, good. We are, let's see, I think we're looking for a presentation on this, members, is that correct? Okay. So Mr. Yalkantzi, I'm giving you 5 minutes. So if you can just focus on sort of the key points.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Please, just to say that you've had a good discussion on one aspect that we're dealing with here in your previous application, so I won't cover the same ground. Next slide, please. This gives you the broad location, broad location and the size of the property as it's located on Dover Court and on Edison. Next slide, please. The area is in, let me get back to my notes here now. The zoning is an R4UA. It's got an exception 2686, height limit of 8.5, which has been modified by section 146 of Westboro overlay, which permits the higher heights. It's an inner urban transact designated as neighborhood. It is close to Churchill. It is on the corner of a collector, which is Dover Court, and there are a number of bike lanes in the vicinity. Next slide, please. This gives you a look at the various properties, the subject property itself on the lower left corner, and then a view of the streets. As you can see, there's a significant number of street trees in this neighborhood. Next slide, please. Oh, can you back up one slide, please? There's something I forgot to mention. On your upper right-hand corner of the slide, you'll see that there are 3 new dwellings that have been built, semi-detached and a single detached. And you'll note that there's no trees in the front of those properties. Next slide, please, then. This gives you the context of semi-detached dwellings in the neighborhood and also lots with 3 buildings on them that are of a similar size and character of the proposed development. Next slide, please. The next slides have to deal with responses and discussions with the community and the community association. So one of the first requests I got was, where are you going to put the snow? And so what we planned here very carefully was the notion, and you'll see the circles in red, a single lane servicing the parking at the between the buildings and at the rear of the northerly semi-detached. Next slide, please. We modified the setback on the northerly townhouse, semi-detached, excuse me, from 1.2 meters to 1.5 meters to in response to discussions with the northerly neighbor. Next slide, please. In terms of height, we reduced the detached dwelling to 10 meters to be in compliance with the zoning bylaw in the sense that an interior lot as a single dwelling requires a 10-meter height limit. In terms of the parking, we've gone to 1 driveway with 3 parking spaces. Then the net effect you'll see in the etched line is the existing garage and driveway that's there now. We tried to replicate that as much as possible, but just by moving it over between the buildings so that there wouldn't be an impact on adjacent neighbors for the parking. And next slide, please. The community association made a suggestion to us that they didn't really like the way we were doing the parking and suggested that we take a look at the property to the southwest corner. And this is that property to the southwest corner. And you can see how the parking is handled there. I do not think that is a superior solution. This is the old-fashioned extension over the top of a parking space with driveways, and you'll note as well that it would appear that the gravel, which is supposed to be soft landscaping, could potentially also be used for parking. Our parking is much more and similar with the character of the neighborhood. Streetscape analysis would indicate that parking is mostly in the rear of properties through laneways and other ways like that. We've placed it in between the buildings. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to
I'll give you another minute.
We wanted to protect the green space and remembering that permeable driveways are required by the Westboro overlay. The lot areas, the lot severance comply with not requiring any new services, all the rest of that sort of stuff. I'm hoping I'll get to express myself on some other issues. A little note around the chronology of the discussions with the community association and neighbors. I have a very detailed list that starts on July 17th with the activities that we took place in terms of flyering the neighborhood, and has all the discussions that we had all the way up to September 23rd. I didn't provide that to you. I have a separate copy if you need it. The lot areas that are proposed. So the overall lot area is 300 or 600 and some square meters. The lot area required for 2 semi-detached and a single detached is 600 or 60 square meters. So the lot areas in themselves is very close to what is permitted for three properties. In addition, all of the properties comply with the requirements of the lot width.
All right, so Mr. Yalkatsi, really just what's your last final comments on this? Because maybe we can explore the rest of your presentation through questions. But if you had, another 30 seconds, what do you want to leave with us?
What I would want to leave with you is that there's been a lot of confusion about how the units are counted. Under the Planning Act, these are 3 dwellings, 2 semi-detached and 1 single detached. All of the homes in the neighborhood, all of the semi-detached in the neighborhood could all have a primary dwelling unit and 2 additional units. Throughout all of this, and the evidence that I have for you, is we provided to the community association on the day 1 and to the neighbors whenever they asked. Not only did we provide them with the dwelling type, we also provided them with the dwelling count, the unit count in them. There's been a lot of emails out saying that we were trying to mislead people. That information went out very early. Our notice that went out was very similar to the city's notice that also described the project as a semi-detached and a single detached. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Yalkatsi. We did have this discussion before, and as you know, I know what the Planning Act says, but I also know what the regulations requirement for notice. It's about public consultation, being asked questions like that. I don't think it's, I wouldn't say that you're misleading, but full disclosure in these things is always better than you're gonna attract more bees with honey on that, right?
So Madam Chair, just to reflect on that, on the 17th of July, we emailed the councillor with the rationale and plans. And as you know, the unit count is in the rationale. On July the 17th, we also emailed the community association again with specifically in the email itself, noting the dwelling unit types and the unit count. And we did that with anybody who contacted us from the flyer on the day 1.
Okay, and I did see some comments come in about, no consultation, that kind of thing. So I do appreciate those comments. Thank you for providing that additional information. Okay, questions from the committee? Okay, so you're aware then, Mr. Yalkatsi, about the concerns staff have about the 0-meter yard landscape buffer. So can you tell me what you did to consider the reduction, decreasing your relief required with regards to the landscape buffers, or did you look at different designs that might have helped that?
So Madam Chair, we looked at, originally we looked at a series of townhouses on the project. We looked at a series of different alternatives, and what we wanted to do, and this is where I'm a little bit concerned about how people are reacting to this type of project. Number 1, we wanted to retain as much of the street frontage as green and have locations for trees that we would be able to put in for the trees that we know we're going to lose at some time. Whether we lose them now or lose them later, as this one particular tree that we have at the backyard that is in marginal condition, but we wanted to protect it. It's interesting that initially the tree arborist came back and said, well, you should cut it down. And I said, no, I don't want it cut down. I want to keep it. Because again, I have seen trees survive when we do the right thing around them. And so I've been building buildings and we see large trees very close to existing constructions. Just as a note, the comment from one of the neighbors with regards to the root, the critical root zone being in the zone of our buildings, it's not. And that's shown on the TRI. The comments from the city staff with regards to tree are well appreciated in addition to that. But we felt, and again, it's a lot similar to what the discussion was with the previous application. The clients, we have 2-bedroom units. They're all 2-bedroom units. We don't have bachelors. We don't have 1-bedrooms. They're all 2-bedroom units on this project. The design of the building is such that we don't have units in the basement, deliberately so, because we know we have a fairly high rock situation there. We don't know whether we're going to have a full basement or partial basement. We will have mechanical equipment in that basement for whatever basement we're able to excavate. But by putting the parking at the rear of the property where it is has the least effect on neighboring properties. We put it in such a location that it's between the buildings and only have the 2 cars pushed up towards the neighbor on the north, where we've agreed to put up a solid fence and landscaping. So we've left a buffer for landscaping at that location as well. That necessitated us, because of the way the zoning bylaw is written, to ask for that relief. But because of asking for that relief, we are actually creating a superior benefit, particularly in comparison to that property to the southwest, of very few driveways, lots of green space out front, and we've got porches with balconies that overlook the street, create that front.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yakotsi. Any questions? I'd like to go to the public portion of this application. Okay, so who do I have? I have a couple of residents on my docket here. Do we have a resident last name Caharis? Remote, apparently. Yes, okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll bring them.
Yes, you do, ma'am. I don't know if you can see me. Let me just put on my video.
We can hear you. And yes, I see you. Go ahead.
Thanks for allowing me to speak, and I will, if you don't mind, take the 5 minutes. I am sitting here quite, I would say, to put it mildly, I would say we are all being misled. I know, Madam Chair, you said you wouldn't use the word misled. I'm using the word misled. I have sat on Canada's largest administrative tribunal at the highest level, where credibility and evidence were extremely important, life-changing in some cases. And I can tell you, we being misled. You were just shown a photograph of my house. I live at 644 Edison Avenue. That photograph that was just shown to you was at least 5 years old. There are 8 trees now growing on my land. Here is the evidence. 8 trees growing on my land. And you were just shown a photograph that is at least 5 years. I don't know how many years before, but I've owned that house from August of 2020, and there are at least 8 trees. What you heard is exactly what we have been told, that what is proposed is like 644 Edison and the semis right next to it on Dovercourt. It actually isn't. They are proposing, there is nothing that is similar. There are no buildings with 3 balconies on Edison or on Dovercourt next to it. There is no building with that height. Everybody has parking. I live in 644 Edison that Mr. Zalowski has referred to several times. We are 2 people in the house. There is no other unit in the house. Next door to me, in the double unit, in the 2, there is 1 double unit of 1 person and 1 double unit duplex with 2 people. That's it. That's all of us that live in those houses that he keeps referring to. When we saw the notice, the original notice, and I'm sure many neighbors have written in with the word misleading or some combination of that or some reference to that. We are educated, very accomplished people who know how to read these kinds of documents. And I can tell you unanimously, the neighbors are feeling we have been A, misled, and B, there has been no consultation. There is no sign on the 633 today about today's hearing. There was never a sign saying there's going to be a hearing on October 2nd. There was a sign in the previous one in September, which got postponed, that I was also waiting to speak on. And in that one, it never said the number of units. The only thing we got from Mr. Yarosky was a flyer. Nowhere did it say there were 9 units. We all thought, like he keeps repeating, that they were going to do what 644 Edison and the 2 duplexes next to it are going to look like. And all of us said, okay, we're not opposed to development per se. We understand the need for development. But to be misled in this fashion, and you are being misled, there are 2 photographs in the documentation that you have that Mr. Yarosky has put. There are drawings on them where the buildings have been placed on the photographs. Madam Chair, neither of those are the corner of Edison and Dovercourt. Neither of those photographs that he has supplied to you are of the correct corner. There are some other corner down the road in Dovercourt. They are not the corner where I live and stare out of my window every single day. Mr. Zarowski and I agree on one thing. He said that he wants to conform to the existing buildings that are there, the existing houses. I can tell you, having lived there for 4 years, and people who have lived there for like 20 years will tell you, my neighbors will tell you, that there is no such building on Dovercourt or Edison that he is proposing. He took issue with me saying these are apartment buildings. Well, I don't know what the definition of an apartment building is, but to me, if something's got 3 balconies in front of it and looks like an apartment, it's a bit like saying it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, but it's not a duck. I'm sorry, these are 3 apartment buildings in the layman's term that he's proposing, maybe not in the city bylaw term, but I can tell you in common usage, he's proposing 3 apartment buildings, and the neighbors are unanimously opposed to it. Thank you for your time, ma'am.
Right on the bell, right on the button. So Mr. Kara has, you've said a lot about the information that was shared with you by the agent. Would you have, by any chance, a copy of that flyer that you might be able to send? I don't need it now. I don't need it for this hearing. But if you still have a copy of that flyer, is that something you could share with our committee staff?
Absolutely, I could share that with you. No problem at all.
That would be
he has it as well. Nowhere does it say 9 units. We all looked at it and we thought, because it refers to my house and the 2 next to it, we all thought that's what he was going to build. And we all got together and said, okay, that's not too bad. You know, we're all for development. That's not a problem. He's proposing basically apartment buildings. I mean, there's no other term for it. They're apartment buildings. And we don't have any apartment buildings on Edison or Dovercourt around there.
All right, thank you for those comments. I just do want to let you know, though, that the province has been very aggressive in permitting the addition of units on anybody's property, right? It doesn't
I
even have to
fully
come back
appreciate
here.
that. I fully appreciate that, but I think what they have mainly termed, what they have been suggesting in the province is that if you have a building like I do, for example, I could have a basement apartment or I could build on. He's not proposing that, ma'am. He's proposing 3 balconies. This is an apartment building. It looks like an apartment building. As I said, if it looks like a duck, it is a duck. And this looks like an apartment building with 3 balconies. It's clear.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions for
I'm
us?
sorry to be, quite enthusiastic about this, but you can understand that neighbors have come together. At least 20 neighbors have come together. We've had umpteen discussions about it. There is unanimity amongst us. Absolutely, I can tell you categorically, we are all unanimously saying we have been misled, you have been misled, and
Mr. Karakas, I'm going to go on to Member
Okay,
Coakley,
thanks.
who may have a question for you. Just a moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Ms. Garris, is it the number of units that you're concerned about, recognizing what the chair just said about province being very aggressive about allowing anybody to add units within their existing building? So is it the number of units that you're most concerned about, or is it the fact that the design of the buildings with the balconies you've referenced a couple of times, like you say, looks like a duck, quacks like it, that it looks like an apartment building? Would you have less concern if it looked, in your mind, less like an apartment building than it currently does? Or than the idea is?
No, my opinion on that would be irrelevant. My opinion, my answer to that question is that we are all in agreement, the neighbors, that if Mr. Jarolowski does what he has referenced to us, which is one building that looks like mine, 644 Edison, and a duplex next to it, that he has continuously referenced, we have no objections. None. It is requiring 13 variances from what I understand. And many of us have written in. You must have a stack of letters by now.
We do have those records. Yeah, thank you for that. Any further questions, Member Coakley? All right, any other questions from any other member? Okay, I'm going to move on. I've got other speakers on my list. Looking for resident Imensky, last name. Come on down. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Gerald Ubansky. I am the neighbor, together with my wife Peggy Brown, of 631 Edison, the property immediately adjoining north to the subject property we're talking about. Yes, we are not particularly approving of this particular project. I sent in some written submissions. I'm not going to read those submissions, nor am I going to repeat them. I'm going to try and focus on the information that we have accrued since. One of the issues that has risen here, and is a prevailing issue among the community, is that we have been misinformed deliberately or otherwise. The photo that I think is still on that computer of the home across the street, on the southwest corner, is a case in point. My friend indicated that that was a treeless lot in order to substantiate his position with regards to the trees on the subject lot, when in fact, as the previous speaker spoke, that photo is at least 5 years old, and that is a well-treed lot at this point. So was that a deliberate misrepresentation, or simply a miscalculation, or a misinterpretation? I don't know. In my submissions that I sent to the committee earlier, yesterday or the day before, I included a drawing from my friend's presentation that showed the offending tree, the tree that is causing us some grief. In his drawing, the location of the tree is not correct. It is a shared tree. It is on the lot line, and clearly that drawing does not include the tree on the lot line, but at least 2 meters north of it. It also moves the tree 2 meters further to the east towards the back lot line, which takes it away from the construction zone. Error or deliberate misdirection. So we have very little faith in the credibility of this project for the number of issues that the neighbors have found that don't quite add up. But as to the project itself, there's 4 criteria that the committee must address. Is the variance minor? Well, maybe a minor variance is exactly that, something that is relatively inconsequential. However, when you start adding them all together, they become major. They're seeking a lot reduction for the detached dwelling, the 3-unit apartment building, they're calling the detached dwelling, of 20%. They're seeking another lot reduction of 12.3%. These are not small numbers. If you said that we had an inflation rate of 20%, no one would say that was minor. They want to change the width of the driveway from 3 meters to 6 meters. Again, 100% increase that adds up to 41.2 square meters of pavement that wasn't there before. They want to increase the height of the building, and the location of the building is going to significantly reduce the light that my neighbors on the west side of Edison enjoy, and certainly the light that we currently get in our backyard. But the most egregious of the minor variances that we're talking about here is reducing the rear yard by 4.5 meters to 0. Over the course of the length of that building, which is about a 12-meter building, that adds up to 457.9 cubic yards of building that otherwise would not exist. There is no way in the wildest of imaginations that that kind of increased use can be considered minor. These variances would have a great impact on the adjoining lands. The abutting property owners would endure significant losses of privacy, etc. It also raises issues with regards to parking and traffic. We've been talking about that as well. Certainly, there's a limited number of people who are involved in the residence. However, all the service vehicles, all the visitors, all the Amazon delivery trucks are going to have to come to Edison Avenue in order to service that 9-unit apartment complex. Let's put in fact that Dovercourt, though may be a connector street, is still in a residential area that is designated at 30 kilometers per hour as a maximum speed and has no parking. To say that you can build that kind of apartment concentration on a street that has been deliberately maintained as a residential low traffic flow street is inconsistent with other planning.
You're almost out of time, so I'm going to give you an extra 30 seconds to
Then that's probably all I'm going to use. Thank you very much. I think one of the most important parts of the presentation I would like to make is that intensification is a good thing. A lot of these homes in this area are small homes on large lots, and that is a good thing to increase the intensification in the neighborhood. The plot that they had originally planned, similar to the Southwest, would increase the use of that by 300%, turning 1 unit into 3 family units. There are 6 contiguous blocks of single-family units that are either detached or semi on Edison Avenue. So what we're really talking about here, if you maintain the consistency of the neighborhood, is a reduction from the proposal that they're making of 6 units. And I pointed out in my written submissions that between Scott and Carling, currently proposed or under construction, this doesn't include the ones that are just recently being rented, there are 3,852 condominiums or apartments in that area within walking distance of this location. So to reduce that 6 adds up to a reduction of housing of 0.17%. And my submission to the committee is that is not enough to justify undermining the integrity and character of that neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
comments. Any questions for our speaker from the members of the committee? All right. I don't have anybody else on my list. I'm going to make a call out. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this application? Come on down, Mr. Gray.
Tim Gray with the Westboro Community Association. Boy, I don't know what to say on this one. We sent in an email with all our, the nuts and bolts and facts and figures of the variances that were requested, and you've got all that. You had two excellent speakers, and they've kind of addressed all that. But I got to address this misunderstanding, or however you want to call it. We heard about this at the Westboro Community Association almost immediately, as soon as the sign went up, because we thought the same thing as the residents did. It's, I know that those three homes across the street vividly. I've driven by them hundreds and hundreds of times. They're a beautiful development. I've been there just recently, and today I was shocked when I heard there were no trees there, because I've just been there within the last month, and there's lots of trees. They have gone to a lot of hard work to address that. So yes, you're being misled. When you're misled like that, it just makes any kind of dialogue totally fall apart, because and you've heard it. The residents don't trust the agent. Why have a dialogue with somebody who you don't know is going to, give you the truth, basically? In the original, Jerry, the neighbor, he opened up the Committee of Adjustment file and saw that, read in that file, hey, they're going to cut down my tree. That's what he said right in the original proposal. No contact with them, no knock on the door, no nothing. And when you have something like that happen, it turns the whole process into this freak show. And so now the community association is kind of stuck in the middle here, trying to communicate with the agent and communicate with the neighbors who we have the ultimate responsibility to, but neither of them want to talk.
All right, so Mr. Gray, do you have, and you only have about a minute left.
Yeah,
that
sorry.
number's just come on,
Yeah.
but you've
No.
been, you've been talking for at least 4 minutes at this point.
Yeah.
Do you have any of the material? So when the committee hears this kind of thing, obviously we're concerned about it. So if you have material that you can share with the committee staff, that would be appreciated. We will ask Mr.
he has the
Okoski to do
flyer.
the same.
Yeah.
So that, so that we can at least have a look at things ourselves. Because I can hear the frustration from you and from the residents as well. Aside from that, now that we've heard some of that, any other concerns regarding the proposal itself? I'm going to give you a minute.
Well, I mean, it's just the sheer number of variances, and at the Westboro Community Association, our mantra in this area is talking about the Westboro infill study, and that is the thing. And in a nutshell, what we expect the development that is happening in that area. Those bylaws are only 3 years old, and we expect them to be, adhered to. And the request for variances are minor. How can you say that when you eliminate the 4.5 meter landscape buffer, that is minor? Is that in following the intent of the bylaw? It just isn't. It is so out there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gray, for your comments. Any questions from members of the committee on this? Okay. Any other speakers, either in person or online at this point? All right, so I'm going to call the public portion closed at this point. So, Mr. Yelkotze, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. We're going to reserve, pretty clear that that's what we need to do. But I'm going to give you 2 minutes just to rebut on some of that and request that if you can provide some of the material that you talked about in your consultation, that would be helpful to the committee. So go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Number one, I have to do mea culpa because I'm taking pictures off and I'm a little bit asleep, and I do know that the neighboring properties do have trees and they were put in place. It was when they originally were built, they didn't have them at that time, and the bylaw wasn't there yet. They are great looking properties from that perspective. There's no doubt about it. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. Number one, I had a full email exchange, which I'll provide you with my northern neighbor. Okay. I had full email exchanges over a period of time with the community association, which
Do you have all that with you here?
Excuse me?
Do you have all those?
Yes, I
with
have
you?
it all
Okay,
with me
so,
here.
so
gonna
I'm just going to ask
so I'm
you
gonna
to
jump, I'll jump into the other aspect.
Yeah, so yeah, because you can just provide that to committee staff before you
If we
leave
can-
today.
If we can have slide A23. Quickly, please. The location of the tree is as per the survey and is on the neighbor's property. So it's on their property. It is a large tree, so part of the edge of the tree is on our property as well. The variances should not be considered as something that's accumulating. As you are aware, as a committee, you are aware that variances are dealt with in terms of their effect in the neighborhood. And I think I've demonstrated to you that all of the variances that we're requesting are such that they are minor in the sense that they either improve the character of this type of development, or that they are minor in terms of their effect on the community. In terms of the look of the buildings, the look of a 3-story building with balconies on it is not an apartment building. It is a very interesting semi-detached and single detached dwelling with 3 units in it. We deliberately, as I indicated previously, focused on creating a very interesting architectural look from the building. My other mea culpa was that my geolocation on when it went and located those buildings, located it on the next lot over. But the effect, if you look at it in the plans, and it was corrected in my rationale, we put it on the proper lot, is exactly the same because it's a very similar corner in both of those locations.
All right, 30 seconds. 30
Yeah.
seconds. Mr. Yelkotze.
So you'll have all of the emails that I have. It's quite incorrect. Everybody, including the community association, the minute they contacted us, were provided with both the rationale, which had all the unit numbers in it, as well as the plans of the buildings which showed the unit types.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yelkotze. We are reserving as a committee. So as you know, you'll get the decision within, all right, I know you're aware of that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our agenda. I'd like to thank everybody for their participation today in this hearing and in the hearing of this application in particular too. And with that, if there's no other business, members of the panel, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.